Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over hero classes. Hero classes give your hero extra stats, exclusive class weapons, as well as specific perks and traits that will be able to assist them in combat. You can get classes at the end of bonus quest lines in specific kingdoms. For example, Margreen Woods gives the Warden, Adana gives the Mechanist, Broken Spire gives the Warlord, White Helm gives the Priest, Karakroth gives the Sorcerer, Forest of Thorns gives the Archer, and Kitar gives the Necromancer. And if you have any question about where any specific one gives, all you need to do is just go into the hero menu, click over into class, and any of them that you don't have unlocked, just click on it and it will show you where it comes. I have them all unlocked, so I can't show that right now. But anyways, here are the 8 classes that are currently in the game. What classes do is they each give a specific amount of extra stats to your hero as you level them up. Like you can see here, the Archer here is giving 6 attack, 5 magic, 8 armor, and 7 HP. But if we go to a different one like Knight, you'll notice that the stats that you get at is different. You get a lot more armor. You get 4 attack, 11 armor, 8 HP, and 5 magic. All classes, when fully leveled, will give 5 magic to a specific weapon. As you can see here, the Knight class gives 5 magic to any blue weapons that you use. So let's go through all of these menus that we have down here. The first one is the leveling up menu. This is just a standard level menu. You just keep clicking it, and it levels your hero, every single one. You just use souls on it. It does cost basically a static amount every single level. Like the first level up, you'll notice, costs 150 souls, even though I don't have it here. And it just keeps going up, I think, incrementally to about 250 or something like that. So levels do cost a little bit more, but they do average out to about the final cost of how much it costs to get an epic to around level 20. So let's go into perks. Perks are unique bonuses that you can get to on top of your hero. The first one requires 10 wins before you can use it. The second one is 25 wins, and the third one is 50 wins. The first 2 will always be a stat, and the third one will always be a troop type. As you can see, the Knight class can become a Knight classification, and whenever you use it in a team with 3 or 4 Knights, you're going to be getting the Knight bonus with it. And on top of that, if there's any kind of effect that boosts the Knight, it'll also get that, but it will also take extra damage. For example, if something has Knight Slayer on it, you'll still take 2 times damage if you have the Knight class. So more often than not, it's better to take one of the extra stats than it is to take the troop type. For example, one instance where it might be better to take the troop type is on the Mechanist class. On the Mechanist class, you get the Construct perk. And what this is mainly used for is there is Spark Grinder in the game. Spark Grinder gives double effect on his ability whenever it casts on the Construct. So if you set your hero to a Construct and then use that ability on it, it will be gaining twice as much attack and armor from Spark Grinder's cast. For the most part, when you are getting these traits on classes, the best ones to go for are attack, magic, and HP. You normally don't want to take armor because HP is better, and you want to try to stay away from this classification because unless you're actually going to be using it in a 4-time class team, it is not worth using it in most instances. So let's go and keep going on to the other stats. Here you can see traits. Every single class has 3 traits, and the third one, just like all other legendary traits in the game, is a unique legendary trait. And on for the most part with traits, you normally don't really need to get them early on because they do cost legendary amounts. Any of the single color ones like Archer, you're going to have to cost 12 arcanes and 6 arcane for the second one. The dual color ones are 10 arcanes and then 6, but still it costs just as much to trait a hero class as it does for a standard legendary troop. So it is, for the most part, better to upgrade legendaries than it is to upgrade classes. And now on to these other bonuses. Every single class has a specific color that it upgrades as far as your Gem Mastery Mana Surge. It doesn't matter if the hero is in your team, you will still get this Gem Mastery. The Forest of Thorns, this is after you gain level 10 or higher on a specific class, it will become a specific classification. As you can see, Forest of Thorns, you get the Archer class from Forest of Thorns, so it becomes the Archer. Same thing for the Mechanist class. After you get it to level 10, that Mechanist class that you get from Adana becomes a Adana troop, or counts as a Adana troop for the bonuses of the 2 troops, 3 troops, or 4 troops once you get it to level 10. And the last one is the magic bonus. Every single weapon does it for a specific color. You'll notice here that the gem mastery and the magic bonus is exactly the same. That is considered the same color class. If we go to something like a Necromancer, you'll notice that the mana color and the magic bonus are different. It's blue for the gem mastery and then purple for the magic bonus that it gives. So classes that are like this actually cost less trait stones. Like I mentioned earlier, there are only 10 trait stones for this one. You can actually see it right here. It only costs 10 for the first one, and I might as well upgrade it just to show it for this video. And then the second one is 6. But for the single color classes, it will cost 12 and then 6. It's just scaled slightly differently because not as many troops use the single colors. And now for the last tab, we have the skills. Skills are, or the skills, I already showed this earlier, but I mean the 250 win weapon. After you get 250 wins, every single class has a specific weapon that you get for getting those 250 wins. As you can see here, on the Necromancer, you get the Creeping Death. It places Death Mark on the strongest and weakest enemy and then deals damage to all enemies. So it is a fairly decent weapon. And now let me just quickly go through all of the skills on all 8 classes so you know kind of what you're getting on all of the classes. I'm going to be showing the skills, the traits, and then the hero class weapon, and basically say if they're any good and how the class is basically overall. First we have the Archer. Perks, definitely good. Both of them are ones that you would use. You don't really need the elf friend because there's not very many elves in the Forest of Thorns. Right now I think there's only like one other elf, so you don't really need that. Trait wise, Archer actually has some of the best traits of any class in the game. The first one is pretty useless, but it gains fast, which is a 50% mana on any weapon. So weapons that cost like 16 to 20 mana, this is a really good trait because you'll be starting with half of that mana. And this is actually even good on specific weapons that don't give any kind of magic bonus. Like for instance, the cog thing that is the red-yellow weapon that doubles an ally's armor, well, that doesn't scale off of magic at all. So you can use the Archer class to have fast on it, and you already have half the mana on it. And Bullseye is really strong. It's kind of like the Great Maul's ability, which is a 50% chance to devour on skull damage. While it doesn't devour, it has a 50% chance to do lethal damage. Lethal damage means it instantly kills the enemy. So basically the same thing, it just doesn't get the extra bonus from the devour. So it is a really, really strong trait. And as far as weapon goes, it is, and there are the stats. And as far as the weapon goes, it's an okay weapon. Not particularly good, not on the weak side. It deals damage to an enemy and then removes all of a color of either of their colors. Like let's say it's a brown green troop, it'll remove all the colors of one of their color, and then at a 2-to-1 ratio it'll boost the effect based on how many are removed. If you're using on something that only has one color, it'll just remove that one color. So let's go on to the next one. Archer overall, a really good class. Knight, not so much. Skills, you'll notice, like I mentioned earlier, it has a really high armor, but armor isn't really too needed. HP and attack is much better. Perks, also armor, like I mentioned earlier, you don't really need it too much. You basically always want to stay on the HP bonus, unless you're going something like a full Knight team, like something with Knight Coronet, Hero, and Wolf Knight, and whatever else from Sword's Edge. That is actually something that does work. His Knight Order is actually somewhat good to get, because he is from Sword's Edge, and Sword's Edge has a lot of knights that you can place with it. It also gives that extra blue mana surge bonus that you'll have a chance for, since Sword's Edge uses a lot of blue troops. And on to traits. Traits aren't that good. You can basically ignore this troop completely in regard to traits. And his weapon is kind of interesting. It gains armor based on magic, and then moves to the front of the team and then gives all other allies a barrier. So it is an extremely defensive weapon. So it's not going to help you really defeat the enemy quicker, but it is extremely defensive, and it's the only weapon in the game that actually lets you switch position. Like, there's weapons in the game that switches enemies' position and stuff like that, but this is the only one that actually switches your own team's positioning. So that is a somewhat unique mechanic that it has there. Overall, Knight class you can kind of ignore unless you really want to build a strong Knight Coronet team, maybe with a Valkyrie and your hero class or something like that, or just go completely Sword's Edge. Okay, on to the Mechanist class. For perks, you'd pretty much always want to go with the Carbon Steel for the attack bonus, or go with the Construct if you're using it with something like Spark Grinder, or basically that's the only case you'd ever use that. Trait-wise, you don't really need it too much. His last trait can be really good. The main problem is there's not that many constructs that are good in this game right now, so this 50% bonus mana to all constructs isn't particularly strong. It might be in the future, but for the most part, you can ignore trading the Mechanist class. And it is considered Adana, has that red, red, brown. And there are stats, again, not the best of stats, but it does have slightly less armor and has it more into attack and HP. So it is somewhat decent compared to Knight or something. The most notable thing about the Mechanist class is it has one of the best class weapons in the game. It has the Dragonator. For only 11 mana, which is the lowest mana cost of any class weapon currently, it will burn, freeze, silence, and deal damage to a random enemy. So that is a lot of status effects, a lot of damage, and overall it is a really good weapon. So for the Mechanist class, get the weapon. Anything else, you don't really need it too much. One other thing to mention, for the most part, you don't need a trait classes, but you also don't really need to level classes either. You don't have to have a the hero in your team in order for the wins to rack up. So you'll be able to get your perks and the hero weapons without having your hero in the team. So that's something good to consider if you don't actually want to use your hero in the team. You can just leave all your classes at level 1 and just use them to get the weapons. You don't even need to use your hero in the team. But if you're going to use your hero, you definitely want to upgrade the class that you're using that hero with. So next, Necromancer. Perks. Both decent perks, HP or magic. As far as the undead bonus, there are teams you could use with that. The main problem is this class does give a purple mana bonus, and a lot of undeads are purple, so you might have mana conflict if you try going a full undead team. On to traits. Traits are okay, not particularly good. It does give an extra soul on 4 and 5 times matches. So if you don't have a Valkyrie on your team, you could actually use this class, and you'll be able to accumulate some souls without having to force yourself into a common Valkyrie team to soul farm. And its best trait would probably actually have to be its second one, in which it gains the Magic Spirit, which if you make a team with 4 magic or 4 purple troops on your team, which is pretty common since if you make an all undead team, you'll be getting 4 extra magic. And one other thing to notice with all these magic buffs and everything that the hero class gives, the hero classes are really good with low mana costing weapons as well as full AoE weapons. Like this weapon that deals damage to all enemies. Any weapon that does damage to all enemies is really good at scaling with hero classes. So things like that red weapon that hits all of them, this one that does, this purple weapon that hits all of them, things like War and Peace that you get from completing the Kazil questline. There's a bonus questline at the end of it that gives a brown-green weapon that hits all enemies. That is really good too. Let's just claim this real quick. I'm already here, might as well. Before I explain the rest. 8 tributes, yeah. Okay, so let's keep going. Back to hero classes. Back to... come on. And back to class. Okay, Necromancer, we just went over that. Priest, one of the more defensive and decent classes. Oh, I didn't get my overview of Necromancer. Necromancer, mostly for the weapon. You don't need to trade it. You don't really need to level it either. And let's go into the Priest class now. Perks. You get the HP and the magic, either one of those two. Both of those would be really good. And its Divine is also really good. Do keep in mind, I forget if I mentioned it yet, but you can only have one perk chosen to be active at a time. which is why I keep mentioning why you might not want to have this divine or your third trait on, because it can be a negative to you if your enemy has something that does like 2 times damage to divine or something like that. But divine is actually fairly good on a priest class, because there are a lot of good divines in Whitehelm, as well as Valkyrie's a divine, and Valkyrie's pretty common in soul farm decks, which you could just use your hero with it too. So perks, definitely good. As far as traits, the traits are decent too. You have that Divine Bond, which will be really good since it does work good with Divines. You have that Air Link, which is bonus yellow. A lot of Divines use yellow. And the Divine Aura is quite possibly the best true damage counter in the game. It heals all allies for 2 per turn. So that is a possible total of 8 healing every single turn. And that's basically like a single troop's regeneration, but doubled and on every single troop. So that is really strong, actually. One of the best traits in the game. Unfortunately, it is not offensive. It's mostly just to counter heavy true damage teams. So that's something to consider if you ever see true damage getting really, really annoying. You might want to consider upgrading this class completely. And of course, it's all yellow. And as far as the stats, it gains a lot of HP. Actually, I think this is the tankiest class you can possibly pick, is the priest class, between its traits and how high it gives. That's 20 total right there, 12 HP and 8 armor. And like I mentioned earlier, HP is better to have than that armor. It does only give 3 attack, but you're mostly going to be using this as a back tank or something anyways. You won't have this troop. You won't have your class, or you won't have your hero in the first slot if you're using this class, is what I'm trying to say here. As far as its weapon is not good. Everything about the class is pretty much on spot except its weapon. It costs way too much mana for what it does. All it does is cleanses all allies and then gives all other allies some life based on your magic. It's okay. There's other weapons in this game that basically do the same thing or similar thing for lower mana cost, so it's not really that needed. The class overall, you don't need the weapon, but it is worth considering leveling it and trading it. Next up, Sorcerer. Sorcerer is arguably the best class in the game. Why? Well, as far as perks go, magic is really good, life is really good, so you can make it as a tank or offensive with magic. You don't really need it to have it as a daemon. That is really, really situational if you will need that or not. But as far as traits, this is where it really, really shines. First off, its first trait is Magic Link. And since the first trait doesn't cost any arcane trait stones, it's the easiest to get. Of any class's first trait in this entire game right now, the Sorcerer is at the absolute best, because Magic Link is really, really powerful compared to all of the other first traits on all of the classes. So even if you can't afford all the expensive arcane trait stone trading, you can definitely consider this class because it's really easy to get its first trait. The second trait is okay. It gives 1 armor whenever an enemy casts. Not particularly strong, not fairly weak, but it's okay. But the main thing that makes this class absolutely absurd is Dark Channel. Dark Channel is a 50% chance to gain 1 magic every single turn. So basically the same chance that Poison has to do 1 damage. You can end up getting into the 20s, into the 30s, into absurd amount of magics on your hero. And if you use a full AoE weapon that'll hit all of the enemies, you're basically gaining 4 damage every single time you gain a magic from this. So you can start to really, really do damage. You can even just get to the point that you just like 1 or 2 shot an entire enemy team with your purple full AoE weapon. As far as bonuses, it's of course all purple. It doesn't really work that well with many Carecraft teams, but it does have like Green Slime. Green Slime's actually pretty good with it because Green Slime it creates some greens and then converts all greens to purple. As far as skills, it is the tankiest. Scratch that. Sorcerer is the tankiest class currently in the game. It has a total of 21 durability, 10 armor, and 11 life. So 1 less life than the priest class, but it does have an overall 1 higher durability. As far as its weapon is not that good. It's similar to the priest class. They have basically everything is good about them except their weapon. This summons a random daemon, and with your magic, you'll easily be able to get this to a level 20. It's mostly not that good because 14 mana is quite a bit to just summon a single thing, and there are better summoners out there, and you kind of need a slot destroyed before you can even start summoning. So it's definitely not the best of weapons. It's pretty funny to bring in Arena because you can actually summon the legendary Abrath there and have that come in. But outside of Arena, you really don't need this weapon. But overall, yes, you do want to level that class. You do want to trait that class. It's actually one of the first classes you may want to consider trading. Warden. Warden is quite arguably the worst class currently in this game. It gives armor, which is absolutely useless. The magic, which is you'll use it with abilities and stuff like that. And the Beastmaster, and you'll be able to become a beast class, but there aren't that many good beasts currently in the game, so you don't really use that either. There's also not that many beasts in Margrim Woods, so you can't really fully utilize that with the Kingdom bonus. As far as traits, it has the worst traits possible. It just has the Avenger, gains some more attack, beast bonus, which there's not that many good beasts, and its a legendary trait is probably one of the most unlegendary traits in the game. All it does is give all allies 5 armor. The defender bonus thing gives 3 to all allies. Of course, it only works when you're defending, but still, that's basically the same thing as this, and this is a legendary trait. A ward, if it gave like 10 armor to all allies, I could see this being really good, but 5 armor, you don't really need it. There's nothing you'd really use it for. Maybe with Rwani in your team, you might, maybe Paladin, but it doesn't really go that well. I don't know. Just ignore the traits, ignore this class basically completely. The only really redeeming factor this class has is its weapon. Its weapon destroys a row and column and then deals damage randomly split among enemies, boosted by green gems destroyed. One thing that makes this weapon particularly good is it has a 3 times ratio on green gems destroyed. So earlier on in the game, this weapon would actually be really, really strong, because if you can get something like 8 gems destroyed, you just did an extra 24 split damage. So this weapon can start doing really good damage if you put it with like a green gem spawner, maybe with something like Dryad or something. There's quite a few options that you can have, so it can really start doing a lot of damage if you use it correctly. Plus you're getting a bunch of mana because it's destroying both a row and a column. So it is a good weapon to consider. Everything else about it, don't worry about it. Don't level it, don't trade it. And last but not least is Warlord. Warlord is most likely the first class you're going to be getting it because you get it from Broken Spire. Perks are both good. You can get either attack or defense. For the most part, you probably want to go attack and put this troop in your very first slot. The giant strength, you probably won't really need that much. Broken Spire does have quite a few giants, but it does have a bit of mana conflict, so you won't really need the giant strength that much. Traits you also don't really need. They are okay, but not particularly strong for how much they cost. You're better off just using them somewhere else. Gains 1 life for each red ally, then the standard Frenzy gains 1 attack whenever it takes damage, and its legendary trait is it gains 3 attack whenever doing skull damage. So if you get like a skull spawner with it, it will start racking up a lot of extra attack, but for the most part, you don't really need to trait this troop, and that's basically it as far as that. You do want to level it though. This troop you definitely want to get leveled, because you'll be getting that 5 red magic bonus, and the starting weapon that you get at the beginning of the game, Crude Club, this class can start doing a lot of extra damage with it, because Crude Club only costs 4 mana to cast. So you get this extra 5 magic on it, and it's going to be completely tearing up the enemy for only a 4 mana cost weapon. All you need to do is just set your mana, or your banner, to something that has red in it, and you're just going to tear through the enemy team. I showed that in my Let's Play quite a bit, because it's so strong in the early game in Gems of War. Its weapon is okay. For the most part, Crude Club is better, or that full AoE red weapon that you get, I think, for having like 35 red mastery or something. But it deals damage to an enemy, and then it's boosted by their attack. So it's an okay weapon. Good against teams that get like really high attack. Other than that, you won't really need it too much. So to recap, the best classes out there are probably Archer, Mechanist for the weapon, Necromancer for the weapon, Priest for just using it as a anti-true damage. Sorcerer is probably the best overall, especially for earlier on in the game. Warden is completely useless. Ignore it unless you want the weapon. And Warlock, definitely good to consider leveling early on, but you don't need to trade it or anything like that. So yeah, that is basically the rundown of basically everything you need to know about the new hero classes that just came out on console, or anything you might need to know about the PC mobile, since it's on all platforms now have classes. But if you have any questions about classes that I did not mention in this video, feel free to leave in the comment section below. Like this video if you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. That will do it, and yeah, goodbye.